I forgot one. Protect Texture. I've gone ahead and between those two videos created a Texture Brush 1 and a Texture Brush 2. And the difference between these guys is that they have clearly different textures. Now, in most versions of Photoshop, if you were to come to, say, Texture Brush 1 and create one that has Protect Texture enabled, then when you paint with it, oh, you know what? And I've got to save this new brush preset. I'll call this Protect Texture. If you paint with it and you switch to another brush that does not have Protect Texture on, it should preserve it and use that texture instead. However, bad news, in a lot of versions of Photoshop, it doesn't work. You can fiddle with it a bit and you'll see that it won't do that. I'll call this just Protect Texture 2. And now when we paint with one and then switch to the other, which is a Protect Texture, it still swaps out for the textures. Now what it's supposed to do is just store that and save it and it will be good, but you'll notice that it even forgets that it had Protect Texture and loses it entirely. So the workaround that Adobe recommends is to check the little lock icon while you have Protect Texture on, and then it supposedly will switch between the two and then you'll be A-okay. And sure enough, that does the job. Now, on a lot of versions of Photoshop, I think like, I want to say CS6, CC 2016, a couple of others, that will work fine. All the old versions of Photoshop, I never had a problem with it, but on the new ones, a bunch of them, it just doesn't work. So use with caution and keep in mind that you can in fact lock it. So if you're going to be using brushes that have different textures, that's one thing you can do. The bummer being this, so we've got Protect Texture locked on. If we switch to something without a brush, it does just get rid of it, which makes sense without a brush. Sorry, if we switch to a brush without a texture, it does just get rid of it, which makes sense, but it's also a little more confusing because now Protect Texture will be set, but there is no texture for it because it doesn't have it. So that's the downside to using this lock. It doesn't clean up after itself. So it's kind of a workaround, but it still is semi-functional, so you can still use it. If you have an older version of Photoshop, or if they ever finally fix this, just checking that box should be sufficient. So when you use a brush that has Protect Texture and then switch to another brush that is using a texture, the one that was painted first with Protect Texture should override the others. So, you know, good luck with that. The other thing you can do is just flip the lock on both the textured item and the Protect Texture item, and then it will, you know, transfer across brushes until you clear that out. And you can clear that out by either clicking on it, or as we went over earlier, you can reset all locked settings, and then just that will unlock everything, and then you can switch back to whichever brush you're after. So that's the current state of Protect Texture. Hopefully some update soon will fix it. Maybe even by the time I upload this video, they'll have fixed it. That would be phenomenal. But yeah, that is Protect Texture. See you next video.